I'm a child of parental alienation who discovered the truth and was reunited, and now I'm sharing my inside perspective. And welcome to The Insider. I'm Ryan Thomas. This is where I give you the inside perspective as an alienated child. And on today's show, we're talking about why you should always continue to message your child even if they don't respond. And you know, one of the questions I always get is, well, I keep emailing and texting and calling my child, but I don't get any response. Should I continue? Should I stop? What should I make of it? What do I do? And I want to give you the inside perspective, because what you can't understand in all of this is what's going on in the child's mind, how they're perceiving it, what they actually want you to do, despite their lack of response, or even despite them saying, leave me alone, I don't want to hear from you. I've been there. I've been the person that hasn't responded at all, and I've been the person that says, I don't need you, I don't want you. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want you in my life. You don't bring anything good to my life. And I can tell you, and this is why it's important for me to share this, is the thoughts that I had that I'm going to share with you were the exact same thoughts, whether I was saying nothing and not responding, or if I was responding with anger and hate and telling my dad to leave me alone and I didn't want to hear from him. And that perspective is, we want to be loved by our parents. We want to know that we are accepted by our parent, by both parents. And despite what the alienator will get the child to believe, that you don't need them, you don't need their love, you only need our love. We have everything that you need. And that's what was told to me by my mom and the support group that she had, that I call the regime, that controlling influence of my life. They told me, we're all that you need. You don't need him. And so as communication would come, I would spit back that same message. I don't need you. Leave me alone. Or I would just let it go, because what was being told to me and I was regurgitating was the alienator's message. But you know what I was really thinking? I was really thinking, in the back of my mind, deep in my heart, I felt like, don't give up on me. I wanted to know that he was out there, that he loved me, that he cared about me. I wanted to be able to express that love. And so when it comes to communication with your child, the response really isn't anything. It's not as big as you will make it out to be. And here's why. There are two types of alienated children. There is the alienated child that I call the oblivious child. That was me. I bought whatever my mom and the regime said, hook, line, and sinker. They became the controlling influences, not only of how I saw my dad, but how I saw the world and what my entire life was, my life perspective. And so anything that they said, I believed. I had no idea that I was being lied to, manipulated. I had no idea that I was being told and kind of railroaded into making decisions to cut my dad out of my life. I just literally thought, over the course of time, I came to believe mom and grandparents and aunt, the regime, good. My dad and my grandma and my aunt and my uncle on that side, bad. Stay away from them. And so the oblivious child will just kind of go along believing everything. And that, when you're communicating with that person, there is a different challenge, which I'll get into in a second. But the other type of alienated child is what I call the hostage child. This is where the child knows that something just isn't right. Yeah, I know I'm supposed to not like this other parent. I know that I'm supposed to, reject them and deny them and all of these things, but just something isn't right. I don't think that the controlling parent is really all that perfect, is really all that good. I actually want to have a relationship with both of my parents. I actually want to receive that love. I want to be able to show that love. And I realize that hostage child realizes that the other parent isn't all bad. They're sort of on to the alienator. And when that happens, you have really like a locked-in syndrome, because that child knows that it's not acceptable to love that person, to love that parent. It's not acceptable to want to receive a gift or a nice message or love or want to give love. They know I can't do that or I'm in big trouble. It questions my loyalty. It's going to turn things upside down. And quite honestly, I'm stuck here. I depend on these people for their love, their support, yes, their financial investment, all of the things that are controlled in life by the alienating parent and the regime is a lot to go up against for a child of any age. And of course, once that habit gets set, even into your 20s and 30s, like I was in my 20s, I had lived with that knowledge, that awareness, that understanding, that habit of thinking good and bad, that you don't really question it. So when it comes to actually communicating with your child, the reason that it's so important for you to continue to communicate with the child, the oblivious child, who, again, in their heart, in the heart of hearts, the child still wants to be loved and wants to show love. But that flies in the face of all of the negative stuff. So for you to give up, for you to not continue to communicate with your child, makes that child, it reinforces in the belief of that child that you really don't care, you really don't love them, you really don't want to be involved. It makes it that much easier for the alienator to be able to say, see, I told you so. Doesn't really care. It's all for show. Just trying to make, put pressure on you to make you feel bad, but doesn't really care, doesn't really want to spend time with you. And so the minute that communication stops, you instantly prove their point. Even when my dad would continue to send communications and it was scoffed at, it was degraded, it was vilified, whatever it was, I knew at the end of the day, my dad still recognized my birthday, or Christmas, or holidays, or milestones. Yes, it got bastardized, but he was still there. He still showed up for it. He still was a presence in my life that says, hey, I remember, hey, I care. And I can tell you that as a child, any child, as I mentioned, wants the love and respect and the acceptance of both parents. So if I have a big life event going on, whether it be in school or in my personal life, or maybe it's a sports or even a professional thing or a school thing, and everybody else is excited and everybody else is marking that with a gift or a special occasion or going out to dinner or something, and you have a parent that stops communicating because they haven't heard or they haven't gotten back the response that they want, at the end of the day, the kid goes, man, the only one that didn't celebrate was that parent, or for me, dad. And so that's why it's so important, because any little thing that you can at least let the kid know, I'm there and I love you, even if they can't accept it, that makes a huge difference. That makes a huge difference to the child. And you may never know it. My dad never knew that even though he communicated and it was torn down, I appreciated it. I couldn't say it. I wasn't about to communicate that with him. But it was like in the back of my mind, I was like, cool. Like, I got something from him. I got acknowledged from him. And so that's why it's so important for me to bring this perspective from you as a child of alienation. If your child is oblivious and you see no signs of a crack in the armor, where you can see eventually, I think they're close to finding out, or I think they know that the other parent is not what they say they are, you cannot give up on your child, because it will leave them feeling abandoned and it will prove the alienator's point. But here's the really interesting thing, and I want to share a story with you that I think is really going to kind of blow your mind. And honestly, it blew my mind. I thought that it was, I thought that based on my information, like that would make sense and that would be a good thing. But when I heard a reaction from a parent, it really solidified my belief in my perspective as an alienated child for these different things. And so I want to get back into that story and I want to talk to you about the hostage child when we come back. So please stay with me. We'll be right back.
As an alienated parent, do you wonder how your child is manipulated into cutting you out of their life? If you're looking for answers, download Ryan Thomas's book, Sabotaged: 3 Hidden Weapons of Parental Alienation. Ryan shares real-life examples of how he was manipulated into destroying the relationship with his dad to help you learn the specific tactics that are being used against you right now so you can get one step closer to beating parental alienation. Sabotaged: 3 Hidden Weapons of Parental Alienation, book and audiobook, available now for instant download. Want specific advice from Ryan Thomas on how to handle your specific situation? Join Ryan's Reunite group coaching call and private Facebook community and get support and guidance from Ryan and others in a safe environment. Right now, for a limited time, you can join the Reunite group coaching calls and community for just $1 a month. And remember, you don't have to go it alone.
And welcome back to The Insider, where I'm giving you my inside perspective as an alienated child. And we're talking about why you should continue to communicate with your child even if they don't respond. And especially if they respond even with negativity, why you still need to do that. And so we've broken down that there's 2 types of alienated children. There was the oblivious child that just hook, line, and sinker takes anything that the alienator says and believes it as the absolute truth. And why it's important to continue to communicate with that child even though they believe that. But now let's talk about the hostage child. Let's talk about the child that knows that something's going on, doesn't fully believe that you're wrong, that you're the bad person, but they are a hostage within this situation. They are a hostage to express themselves. You need to communicate with them because it may just be a one-way lifeline to them. Just because they can't respond doesn't mean that they don't wish that they could respond. Doesn't mean that they don't wish that they could reach out and say, thank you for that message, thank you for that gift, thank you for those words of encouragement, thank you for your love and support. They are not able to do it because the consequences of breaking out and exposing themselves are just far too great. So I really want you to think about communicating in this one way. You actually have to detach yourself in both situations from the reaction, from the response. You actually can't have any expectations when you're doing this because we want to focus on the idea that you could be that one lifeline. You could be the thing that's saying to the child, I'm still here. I love you. I want to be with you. I want to have a relationship with you. And you really have to think about it as having a one-way sort of pen-pal relationship with somebody who's in prison. If you had a loved one that was in prison and you knew that they couldn't get anything out to you, but you could at least drop them messages, care package, words of encouragement, maybe a gift, something to keep their mind active, something to keep them engaged, something to keep them hopeful. You would do that and you would say, boy, I wish I could hear back from them, but I know that they're in solitary confinement. They can only receive, they can't get anything back. They can't give me any type of thank you, any type of acknowledgement, anything like that. They just can't do it. This is how you have to think about it with your child. You have to imagine that your words of encouragement and love are nourishing their soul, even if they can't admit it, even if they can't say thank you, even if they can't do anything to outwardly express. Let yourself know as a parent that you are there, you didn't give up, and you were trying. Now here's an interesting story that I alluded to earlier. I have been advocating this for a long time, and I heard from a parent who is a mom that was in an alienation situation. The dad, his new wife, let's call her the second wife, they ended up going through a separation and ultimately a divorce. But during that separation, of course, strange bedfellows, right, so to speak, the stepmom reaches out to the alienated mom and says to her, look, I know the situation. I know what's happened. I understand that the child's been turned against you, but I want to tell you that your messages, your texts meant the world to my stepson, to your son. And he couldn't tell his dad that he appreciated it. He couldn't say anything because he knew that it wasn't acceptable. But I want to tell you that he read each and every message that you sent. I could tell that he cherished it. And unfortunately, as the stepmom who was going through this challenge with the dad, I really couldn't do anything at the time to intervene and step in because I had my own issues. But now that things are breaking apart, she kind of gave the mom the inside scoop, so to speak, and said, this stuff helped. This stuff worked. This was like a lifeline to the child, to know that you still loved him. And so I need you to believe that your words of encouragement are necessary. I need you to imagine that your child who's stuck in this prison as a hostage is devoid of love and compassion, humility, inspiration. And it's hard to think about it that way. But just remember, your child is not in a place that champions free thinking and self-expression and opinions or any of those things. They are in a situation where they absolutely are dependent on that parent, on that alienator for everything. And if they're not getting it, then they're just not getting it. So keep in mind, as you're thinking about what you're communicating to your child, imagine that they don't have, the things of life, bread, water, food, nourishment. They're starved of that. So anything that you can say or do, whether you get a response or not, whether you get back anger or not, know that you're sort of giving them the emotional love and compassion and understanding and selflessness and humility that they cannot get anywhere else. That's why I'm a firm believer to continually communicate with your child every single opportunity that you can, regardless of their reaction, regardless of their silence. Know that they are out there and they need you and they can't say it. And that is the inside perspective that I bring you here today as a former alienated child who reunited with my dad. Your kids need your love, they need your support, they need your compassion. They need your presence in their life, whether they know it or not, whether they accept it or not, and whether they can express it or not. I'm Ryan Thomas. I thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Are you ready to take massive action and create your own step-by-step action plan to reconnect with your alienated child? You might be interested in checking out my 5-week online video training program, The Reconnect Formula. Discover what to say, what not to say, how to use email and text to communicate better, and how to use social media to influence your child even if you've been blocked. This is the culmination of my experiences as an alienated child who reunited to help you build the relationship with your child again and get one step closer to reconnecting. So go ahead, check out my 5-week online video training program, The Reconnect Formula.